It was a sharp fellow indeed who could recognize the true nature of an innocent damsel. One such a young man was Johnny. And when he was confronted with 3 beautiful witch maidens, well, listen to the story. There was once a lad called Johnny who set out to look for work. He walked and walked and walked, and finally, close to a forest, he saw a little house, and on the doorstep of a little house, an old man. The old man had his head in his hands, and he was moaning. Sad he well might be, for as Johnny came closer, he could see the old man was blind. Not just blind, actually he had no eyes in his head at all. Just empty spaces where his eyes should be. Now behind the little house was a shed, and in that shed there were many goats. And the man was crying, "Oh, my poor goats, my poor goats," and the goats were bleating to get out. "I know you want to go to pasture. Oh, I would take you, but I cannot, now that I am blind, and I have no one to send you." And when Johnny heard that, he spoke up and said, "Granddaddy, why not send me with the goats?" "Who speaks?" said the old man. And Johnny answered, "One who seeks work, and I'll surely do my best. Take me for your servant. I'll pasture your goats. I'll look after you, too." And then the old man said, "Step up closer. I want to feel your face." Johnny stepped up, and the old man passed his hand over Johnny's face and said, "I think you are a good, honest lad. Yes, I'll take you for my servant. Go into the house. Get yourself something to eat." Johnny was hungry after his long walk. He went in, and he found milk and bread and cheese and apples, and he ate and he ate. "Granddaddy, what about you?" he called. "Shall I bring you some food?" "No, no," said the old man. I'm seldom hungry. Since my eyes were stolen from me, I've thought only of my goats. Now drive them to pasture. The crying of the poor little creatures troubles me. But I must warn you, don't lead them to yonder hill above the forest. If you do, those witch maidens who stole my eyes will come and put you to sleep, and when you are asleep, they will steal your eyes, too." Johnny just laughed. "Oh, you laugh," said the old man, "but have a care." "Surely, Granddaddy, I'll have a care," said Johnny. So he drove the goats to pasture on some wasteland below the forest. He brought them back in the evening, and he milked the nanny goats. He made cheese and butter. He found flour and heated the oven and baked bread, too. After that he was busy all day long and all evening long, and the old man praised him and said, "Johnny, you're a lad in a million. Why, my goats and I would soon have been underground had it not been for you." Johnny just laughed and said, "Well, if you're satisfied, Granddaddy, I am too." Then, one day, Johnny looked up at the hill above the forest, and he said to himself, "Up there are rocks where the goats can climb, and the turf is green and sweet. Why should I shepherd my poor goats on the flat wasteland? There's nothing to amuse them here. I will take them up the hill, for I am not afraid of witch maidens." So what did he do? He cut 3 prickly shoots of apple thorn, and he put them in his hat. Then he led the goats up the hill. Oh, a fine time those goats had up there, leaping and climbing, the little kids playing king of the castle, perching themselves on tops of the rocks and butting each other off. Johnny sat down in the shade of a rock to watch them. But he hadn't been there long when he heard a voice saying, "Good day, young goatherd." And there at his side stood a most beautiful damsel. She was dressed all in flowing white. Her hair was long and shining and black as night. Her eyes were black, and her lips red as cherries, her skin lily fair. She was carrying a basket of apples, and she showed the basket to Johnny and said, "See, what beautiful apples grow in my garden. I'll give you one. You may taste it, see how good they are." She took a rosy apple from the basket and held it out to Johnny. Thought Johnny. "I suppose we have witch maiden number 1 here, and if I eat that apple I shall fall asleep, and then no doubt she shall tear out my eyes, as she did my poor old master." So he only said, "Well, thank you all the same, but my master has an apple tree in his garden, and his apples are much finer than yours. I've eaten my fill of them." "Oh, well," said the damsel, "it's not I that am compelling you." And she walked away. Soon after there came another girl, even more beautiful than the first, and she had a red rose in her hand, and she held it out to Johnny. "Good day to you, young goatherd. See what a beautiful rose I've just picked from my garden. Its smell is sweeter than honey. Smell it and see." But Johnny only thought to himself, "Here must be witch maiden number 2. If I smell that rose, I shall fall asleep, and my eyes shall be plucked out." So he said, "Thank you all the same, but my master has a garden where roses grow too, and I think they're much finer than yours. I've smelled my fill of them." The damsel scowled at that, and when she did, she looked quite wicked and ugly. "Oh, well, if you won't, just let it alone," she said, and she walked haughtily away. Very soon there came yet another damsel, and if the first and second had been beautiful, why, she was even more so. "Good day to you, young goatherd." "Good day, pretty one." "Indeed, you are a handsome lad," said the damsel, "but I think you'd be even more handsome if your hair were not so untidy. Why, come and let me comb it for you." And Johnny thought to himself, "This is witch maiden number 3, and if she passes her comb through my hair, she will surely put me to sleep and then tear out my eyes." So he said nothing, but sat there smiling. And the damsel came up close to him and reached out her comb, and he took off his hat. But when he did so, he quickly drew out an apple thorn, and smack, he struck her with it on the hands. "Help! Help!" screamed the damsel, but she could not move from that place, for she was rooted to the ground. She began to weep and cry and beg, but Johnny cared nothing for her tears, but bound her hands together with the brambles. Then up ran the other 2 damsels and begged Johnny to untie their sister, and let her go. "Unbind her yourself," said Johnny. "But we cannot," they cried. "We have tender hands. The thorns would tear us." You see, they were powerless against his magic. "In that case, then, she must stay bound," said Johnny. So when the 2 damsels came up close and tried to loose their sister from it, Johnny took the other 2 apple thorns he had in his hat, and smack, he struck the other 2 damsels' hands, and they shrieked and cried out, but they too were bound to the spot. "Now see what you've done. Why to us? What have we ever done to you?" "You wicked witch maiden," said he, "I know you for what you are. You tore out my master's eyes." And he left them standing there by the rock weeping, took his goats home, and said, "Granddaddy, I've found someone who will give you your eyes again." And he led the old man up the hill. Then he got to the first witch maiden, and he said, "Tell me where my master's eyes are, or I will throw you into the river and drown you." "But I don't know," said the witch maiden. "All right, come and be drowned." And he lifted her up and made as if to carry her down, and she screamed, "Oh, don't drown me, Johnny, don't drown me. I'll give you the old man's eyes." And she led him to a cavern by the river. When Johnny entered, he thought the cavern was filled with jewels. Piles and piles of them, green ones, amber ones, diamond ones, rubies. But they were eyes, piles of eyes, large and small, of all colors, blue, green, brown, black, red. She turned over the heap of eyes and took 2 out and said, "Here, these are them." Johnny fitted the eyes into the old man's head, but the old man screamed out, "Owls, owls! Alas, these are not my eyes. I see nothing but owls." Johnny was in a rage. He seized up the witch maiden and threw her into the river, and the river carried her away. I don't know where. And he went back to the rock and said to the second witch maiden, "You give me my master's eyes. Your sister is drowned in the river." "But I don't know where they are," said the second witch maiden. "All right." And he lifted her up and made as if to carry her down, but she too begged and pleaded. But when she got to the cavern and she dug through a pile of eyes and came up with 2 and gave them to the old man, he cried out, "These are not my eyes. I see nothing but wolves, wolves everywhere." So then Johnny seized the second witch maiden and threw her into the river, and the river carried her away. Then Johnny went back to the rock, and he said to the third witch maiden, "I'll stand no nonsense from you. Come, give me my master's eyes." "I will give them to you," she said. "You had better," said Johnny, "or it will be the worse for you." And then he swung her out over to the water to show her, but she clung to him and she screamed, Don't, Johnny. I will give you the man's proper eyes." So he carried her back to the cave, and she groveled and scrabbled among the heap of eyes, and from the very bottom of it brought up 2 bright blue ones. Johnny put them into his master's head, and the old man cried, "Praise the Lord, these are my eyes, and I can see everything clearly again. The sky, the earth, I can see you, but I don't see the wicked witch maiden. Where is she?" Johnny looked round, but the witch maiden had vanished, nor did she ever come back again. So Johnny and his master went home together, and Johnny looked after the goats, and the old man made the cheeses, and they lived happily. And if we live as happily, we shall do well.